Hello, colleagues in community affairs. My name is Elizabeth Ipinge, and this is Behind My Back. This podcast serves to identify, discuss, and demythify common societal stereotypes, stigmas, and prejudices. Behind My Back is a podcast that exposes issues that are often whispered about by putting them under the spotlight and speaking about them out in the open on a public platform. We aim to make it okay to speak out loudly about topics that are often viewed as taboo or embarrassing. I believe strongly that this will encourage communities to have more open and honest conversations about issues that matter, thus potentially getting rid of the visible division amongst Namibians due to the stigma. Listeners are reminded that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the podcast, nor those of the podcast's management. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Behind My Back podcast and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, service, or ethnic community.
We find loved ones that normally speak about he thinks that his partner can only love him when he beat him. That is not something in Bible. That's not something in any policy or in any constitution or any legislation of any country. I think this is coming from ourselves, our own beliefs, and it's something that we created for ourselves. When we talk about domestic violence, gender-based violence is what we are trying to address, to stop domestic violence and gender-based violence. But then you find those people that say, yes, if my partner does not beat me, he does not love me. That only comes from a person himself. And that is actually gender-based violence, in fact, speaking the honest. But we find people that speak like that, and they speak it with prideness, because they say apparently, when you don't beat each other, there is no love. But where is it reckoned to say someone must be beaten to be having a mutual understanding of love? I think the mutual understanding relationship is to understand each other, although they come differences of communication. You can have differences of communication, of different argumentations, of different understanding to agree to a point, but really lifting up your hands to someone else, already that is category of gender-based violence, which we are really fighting on. And when you say, if my husband or my partner does not meet me, does not love me, you are actually building gender-based violence in your relationship. And it starts there until you find yourself either in hospital or either a victim of gender-based violence. Yes, there are women also that go out there and drink and just to come and provoke their husband, just apparently to be beaten, to feel like their husband loves him. But that is for me, is really something I can say. That's arrogance of women. And then we also find men who feel like if a woman does not make him a slavery or make him use or do house chores, they feel like they are not loved by their wives, or this woman might be having another partner. But really speaking, sometimes it's coming also from where you grown up. Sometimes these people are grown up in the parents where the two parents are fighting, and then you pick it up that the people, when you ever have a husband or you must be beaten to be in a relationship. Some of them it's coming from the background where you come from. If you come from a house where it's always gender-based violence is there, that person goes with it. But if you come from a house where there's religions and religions are being practiced, you go with that. So those are really something that come also along with your background, where your upbringing from, where you have been brought up. But not really to say I can adopt it to make it part of my life, to be able to have a life partner, to beat me to see like it's the person loves me. I rather look to see a romantic person who care for me, who is really showing in the love in the kind of forms of different, but not to lift up his hands on me, or not to have an abusive life where it's coming in psychosocial, in a kind of psychological problem to allow me to go for abusive or counseling. That I will not agree with women who speak to say he only feel like a man will only love him when he's beating him. That one I totally disagree with women who feel have had that mentality Yes, it's there in the community up there. It's there in public. But that one, I condemn to disagree with it.
This person is insecure because you don't know what you really want in life. Because the moment you love yourself, there's no way you would expect or you will accept the next person just to beat you up or just to insult you or just to hit you in order to feel loved.
If he doesn't hit me, then he doesn't love me. Although more common than expected, this stereotype is widely associated with women both young and old, most especially from the Damara Nama speaking communities. This episode aims to establish the extent to which this claim is true, and if it is, to what this glorification of abuse is owed and how it can be curbed. With us in studio is Simona Isaacs and Liana Hengari. Simona is a proud young woman who grew up in the violent streets of Windhoek, trying to find her purpose in life. She is an ambitious media analyst and also a Namibian podcaster. She has a diploma in business administration and is pursuing a career in the entertainment industry, where she has worked with a certain record label and has had her own music show and has a troupe of artists that she's currently working with. Liana is a counselor, business consultant, author, and poet. Welcome, ladies. Although it is no secret that this issue affects women and sometimes men from all cultural backgrounds, why do you feel that this stereotype is commonly associated with women from the Damara Nama background? Perhaps we can start with you, Liana.
When we look at violence being associated and why women stay in violent relationships, I would say statistically or apparently, it is mostly, it's a stereotype that is mostly associated with Damara women because they tend to be verbal about it. They speak out about it. They are the ones that would rather talk to friends or try to seek help publicly. While with other tribes, it's a thing of cultural norms that comes in. So you don't take what happens in the house outside, or you don't share it with everyone. And with the Damara community, they are open. When they experience violence in relationships or within settings, whether they are at a bar, even between friends, you'll see that they are very open about it, about what is happening. Whereby with other tribes, it's a thing of, okay, in public, we have to act a certain way, and at home, we do it a certain way. So let's keep it behind closed doors.
Before I add on it, there's something that you said, like we are very vocal about it. Yeah. I don't necessarily think it's being vocal about it or speaking out, but then it's a way of them coping with these things. Because if you're saying people are vocal about it, or Damara Nama women are vocal about these things, why are we not getting any help? You see? So for me, even we have to trace it back. Let's go back to the Khoisan people. Yeah. We are the very first indigenous people that have stayed or that were discovered in Southern Africa, and our lifestyle was way different when this colonial people came in. So imagine you were already used to a certain way that you were living. Ne? You're used to waking up in the morning, for instance, at 10 o'clock, and then now all of a sudden you have to wake up at 6 o'clock. That's flippin' frustrating. You understand? So all of those things have led to where we are today. Do you guys get what I'm saying?
Okay, so Simona, if I gather your contributions correctly, what you're saying is that this type of belief has been or is a result of the different social stresses that have been placed upon this Namibian group.
Exactly. Not only Namibian, but then the whole of Southern Africa. Because let's look at the reason why I said the Khoisan people, we are divided in different tribes or whatever it is.
Different subgroups.
Different subgroups. So we have the Coloureds, and then we have the San people, and then we have the Nama Damara people, and then we have the Griqua people. All of those five people that I've mentioned all go through the same things. And it's because of what has happened to them, what has been taken away from them. So as women, it's not like we are boasting about this or we are vocal about this thing, but then it's just us trying to cope with it. And it's such a pity that people do not hear us out and then they will be like, okay, no, it's fine, they are used to it, but then we are not used to it. That's why if we have to go back to churches, our mothers are were the first people that went to church, because for them it was a way of escaping from all of this. But then even the churches has failed them back then and even today.
I just want to find out a bit more before I come back to you, Simona. Liana, you mentioned that the group in question, the social group in question, which is that of the Damara Nama speaking community, is one that is more vocal, and thus you feel this is a contributing factor as to why, this belief of if a man does not hate me, he doesn't love me, is more commonly associated to this group. But I don't know. I kind of fail to understand that, because I think when people make this comment and associate it to the Damara Nama speaking community, I don't believe it is much. It's so much in a positive light, really, to say that this group speaks out about it. It's, I think, in a more glorified type of manner, as though people have this stigma, or there's a stereotype associated with Damara Nama speaking women, to say that it's a sign of love when their partner hits them. It's a sign of affection. It's proof, sort of, to say, for lack of better terms, that this man then loves them. I believe that's the angle that society really uses or applies this stereotype more. Do you feel it's the same thing as to...
Yes, it is really a stigma that is associated. And I would say, and this comes back to everyone, okay, as a nation or as a society, where when you look at violence, it starts when you're small. So this thing is actually instilled into everyone, especially women, where we believe that for him to love me, he has to beat me, or it's a sign. Because when you were little, your mom would discipline you. She'll beat you, or your father. And then they will say, no, we are doing it out of love. That's why we beated you, okay? So now, as a child, you are groomed that, okay, my parents are beating me because they are loving me, and it's for them to discipline me and to show me the way. So as you grow up, you normalize this without even realizing it. So now you're in a state where you've normalized that violence equates love, which it doesn't. So when this man hits you, and he says, no, but I'm disciplining you because you were disrespectful or you didn't give my food on time, you equate it as love because that is what you were taught when you were little. And that's why the cycle actually continues, because now you think this is normal, him beating me is normal. Or the man would say, okay, I was also disciplined by my parents. So when he gets, because it also happens to men, where they also get in abusive relationships. So we've normalized it. And I like what Simona said, that the stereotype is not so much about just the Damaras, okay? Because we take it in a negative way. When we associate it, it's like, can I use an Afrikaans word, where they say Damara lifter? And it's not right, because...
if you can just translate that for our listeners who do
Damara
not
laugh.
understand Afrikaans.
It actually means Damara laugh. Where they associate it with, no, she gets hit all the time, and that's why we call it Damara laugh. However, what Simona said is, it's a coping mechanism. And most times when people speak out, it's because they want help. And most times when people speak out about this, we do not listen to people from the ear of this person needs help and assistance and reference. We look at it like, oh, it's normal. He was just disciplining you. So we as a society, we are also perpetrating these actions to continue. So yes.
Okay. Well, very interesting opinions from both of you ladies so far. With regards to what Liana just said, Simona, it makes sense, honestly, what you said, that perhaps it's learned behavior, whereas the child picks up this belief from childhood because of the reasoning that the parent gave them whilst disciplining them using physical action, if I can put it that way. Do you feel that there are ways then that parents could incorporate, to sort of move away from... instead of leaving the child feeling that, okay, physical punishment or behavior is the way in which love is shown, how can parents discipline their kids with and ensure to put across the correct message and not leave them, with a sort of subconscious type of trauma, which will then lead them into an abusive relationship one day in the future, potentially one day in the future?
I share the same sentiments with her, but then I think here I'm going to play a bit of a devil's advocate. Yeah. We have seen it over the years. Obviously, even the Bible states that you only discipline those that you love, referring to a child. You understand? Let's leave out the GBV happening in between a romantic relationship. But then since, we have to discipline kids now, we have failed. Let's just be honest. Look at how the AMA 2000 kids are happening. Just look how the AMA 2000 kids are acting. Those kids were not beaten. Their parents don't shout at them. They have these white things where goat corners and what. That's nonsense. A child has to be beaten. But then as the government has said, don't abuse a child. Because you can be talking with a child over and over and over and over again. But then they still do the same thing. But then once you're like, okay, fine, I'm going to get the belt and I'm going to beat your butt, then this child, not in a sense where they're going to fear, but then they'll be like, okay, fine, this is where I have to draw the line. You understand? So for me, we have seen that not beating kids are just rebel if you don't beat them. So I do not know how we need to discipline those kids, or should we really say, let's stop beating kids? I think as a parent, just find ways and then don't be so superior over your child. Yes, you are the parent, but then also understand that this child also has his or her own beliefs. That's why we have the identify me as a he, a she, what. You understand? People believe what they want to believe. So for as a parent, I will say, understand your child, speak in a manner where you're not going to scare your child, but then just have a partnership with your child, just like a romantic relationship where you guys settle down, commit, understand one another. That's a thing that parents should do with the kids. I don't know if I've answered the question.
You have, but you've left me a bit confused because I feel you're siding on both sides of the boat, really.
Yeah.
You're tilting on both sides because now you've mentioned that, from what I understood, you agree with the use of physical discipline to an extent. But my first question then would be, to what extent is it still safe to refer to it as discipline versus the extent to which we then start to look at it as abuse?
Okay.
Because, and then secondly, on the other side, you speak of the 2000s and the younger generations that we have now, you feel that they behave in a certain way socially that is perhaps encouraged by the way in which they were raised, in that they were not beaten. But at the same time, you encourage parents to consider sort of the human rights and different beliefs that their kids may carry. But then these things, I feel to an extent, they may not be able to coexist in the way I feel that you're envisioning, because the reason why I believe that these children are not growing up in the same way that perhaps most of us did back then is because of these exact things. Human rights, you don't have the right to beat me, you don't have the right to this, you don't have the right to that, you don't have the right to sort of impose your beliefs upon me. It's because of rights, really, that that punishment or that physical I don't want to call it punishment because then that sounds like the parents hate their children. Perhaps that physical discipline is no longer as active as it used to be. So just those two, areas, can we just, go in there just a little bit more?
Okay. Where should I start?
Let's start with the abuse versus discipline. Like, to what extent is the beating?
Okay, so let's clarify it then. Abuse, what is abuse? The way you're disciplining the child. There are really two different ways of disciplining the child. When you are beating this child, how angry are you? Are you sober-minded when you're disciplining this child? To what extent are you beating this child? Because you can't go and take a broom and hit a child. I mean, we had an incident, was it last year, where a mother hit the daughter so badly that she lost her arm. That's abuse. You understand? And that is not our tribe. It's not from our tribe. is from the other tribe. But then because of this stereotype, we are the bad guys. We abuse kids. Our kids are out in the street because we are abusing them at home. You understand? But then it's really not the case. And then you said human rights and all of those things. Okay, fine. Every household, just as every country has their rights, every household has their rules. So what are your rules as a parent? So I think that's where probably I was trying to balance it. Yes, discipline a child, but then don't do it in an abusive manner. I mean, some parents come home midnight and then they are angry like, why is there no food? And then they start beating a child. That's totally wrong. That's abuse. But then if a child is jumping on the bed or fighting with their siblings, that's where I feel like a parent should stand up and discipline the child. Or I'm trying to send you to go do something and then you are refusing. As a parent, I believe that I should have the right to discipline you, because if you don't listen to me, what are you going to do out there?
Do you think perhaps there are other contributing factors then? We've spoken of historic events that may have occurred that have caused sort of a build-up of the stress. We've spoken about the discipline element that may have sort of gone wrong and then painted the wrong image for the child, and the child grows up believing, with sort of distorted beliefs. So do you think perhaps this behavior or these beliefs could then be attributed to other areas of life? Maybe other things may have happened to this child. What could it be then that this child may have experienced? Maybe do you think we can attribute it to self-esteem issues perhaps? Do you think we can attribute it maybe to the absence of a parent, especially a father perhaps? Some people speak of, in inverted commas, in quotation marks, daddy issues. Is this a thing? Do you think we can then shift some of the blame towards that? Let's start with you, Diana.
Okay, so basically my take would be that with the glorification of GBV, and it takes so many different forms, okay? So violence, the first thing that happens, or why violence takes place, is power. Violence is not about love. Any form of abuse is not about love or discipline. It's about power. And it's the need to assert your power over the next person. Be it physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, it's always about the power aspect. So when you look at relationships, as a woman, most times women would be dependent on the man because of financial needs. And that's why most times women stay in abusive relationships, because of that dependency aspect. That, okay, this man is providing this and this for me, and if I leave, will I still be able to provide for myself, especially if they are unemployed or they don't have anything. So now their sole dependence is on this person to provide for them financially, let's say the food, the house, all that. And let's bring in the aspect of families. So now you are married or in a relationship with this person and you have kids. So now you feel you have to stay in this relationship for the well-being of your kids, and you're not realizing that you're actually doing more harm to the kid then or what. And then it's also the fear. As people, we have this innate need to connect and to be with people and to be around people. So now there's the aspect of fear that if I leave this person, will someone else love me? Will I be able to go into another relationship as myself, and that person will be able to accept me for who I am?
So sort of like a codependency.
Yes, that codependency. So people stay in toxic relationships or abusive relationships because of that dependency and that fear. And also when, usually with physical abuse, when that is involved, there's also psychological abuse. It always coexists, because now as a woman or as a man, because it happens to men, you think this person is the best you can do. You cannot do better than this. So it works into your self-esteem issues that this person is accepting me with all my flaws and somebody else will not. And so you stay, and that cycle continues. And before that abuse even happens, there were signs that led up to that. As a person, because of this projection or hope, you overlook that because you're like, okay, they will eventually change. And when we talk about the cycle of abuse, it's a whole phase. And there's that hope that, okay, this is going to be the last time. she might change, and next time it won't happen. So you kind of put up with that.
Yeah, Simona, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, I would like
about
to
this?
say something. Also, this whole thing is, it also, like, back then, our parents would be like, how strong are you as a woman? If you cannot take this, and then they'll be like, there is more to this. What if you get married to this person? What if, and all of this. So I just wanted to add, like, there's also this thing where a woman wants to prove that she is really a woman, because she wants to endure, she wants to show the world and the society and everyone around her, like, no guys, I'm strong enough, I can go through this. But then deep down she's suffering. I just wanted to add that.
And it's true what you're saying there, Simona. I agree largely with what you said too, Liana. But with regards to what you said, Simona, and that's not just within. I haven't just observed it within the Damara Nama speaking communities, but different communities overall. Even in the Oshuamba community, I'm from the Oshuamba community, and this is something that, thank God, I don't come from a family that does this. But then I have observed it, whereby there's a throne, an invisible throne that parents are somewhat placed on when their daughter especially is married. It's, I guess, symbolic to them that they have done a great job, that their daughter is married and whatnot. And that not so much care consideration is placed on whether this person is actually good for your daughter. Are they treating them well, the way that they're supposed to? Or it's the concern is just that, they're married. Thank God. It's almost like a burden is lifted even.
Yes.
It's a glorification of the son-in-law, whatever. It's even worse when this person is married. But then this daughter is literally married into a whole different problem. And sometimes these problems are known before this person is married. But like, as you've correctly put it, it's a thing of, consider the years that you've been together. You're just going to waste your time. You have kids with this person. Who's going to take you and your kids? And then the child is now married. The daughter is married. And it's a thing of, mom, I'm not okay. He hits me. He does this. No. All of us have gone through it. Hold the sharp end of the knife. Basically, a woman is supposed to suffer for their marriage.
What's the saying? There is light at the end of
that sort of thing. And it's sad, really. It's sad.
And you have to suffer for love. And there's this quote, inverted commas, that, what do they call it? Let me just try and get the strong woman. Being a strong woman. That quote, that as you said, that invisible throne that society has placed on woman, that as a woman, you should be able to endure anything and everything that is thrown to you. Be it abuse, be it what. You can take it, it makes you stronger. But no, trauma does not make you stronger. It actually breaks you and it reshapes you.
Yeah, and the worst part is that it doesn't always happen like, in an almost immediate fashion. It's something that builds up over the years, and only later on you'd be able to pick up that, oh my goodness, this has affected. That's even if you're fortunate, because as we know, mental health is quite expensive here in Namibia. So one wouldn't even be aware of the fact that they have a mental health issue going on, and even if they do realize it, they may not realize where exactly this is stemming from. And you spoke about earlier, Liana, you mentioned that some of the reasons why these sort of situations occur is because the perpetrator sort of sees this as the abuser now in this case sort of sees this as a way of, like, as an assertion of power over the other person. But my question is, in my mind, I'm like, okay, does it really count as power if this abuse is being done, being done on someone who's essentially weaker than you are? I mean, if you are a grown man, even first of all, physically, generally speaking, men are, physically more built up than women are. So there's already that disadvantage. The strength, the force that you are able to assert over this person, there's already a disadvantage there. Even worse for a child, especially when it comes to size now and all of those things. But when it comes to another man, you probably would not even have the strength to just speak up, because you know that you've met your match. So I think that's just a sorry excuse, really. And I think it also comes from a place of these men who reason that way. Not only men, though, some women also. Those people who reason that way, I feel it's also from a place of weakness within themselves, and a place of where they have self-esteem issues, where I feel they have low self-esteem, that they feel that their esteem can be built up by enforcing power over people who are weaker in a sense than they are. So yeah, let's move on to the next part of our discussion. I'd like for us to discuss some of the dangers that may arise, from this type of lifestyle where a woman is finally forced into a corner where, maybe not even forced, basically where she just finds herself in a situation where, okay, she's just going to be complacent with this whole setup. She's going to accept the dangers, that she accepts that this is my life, this is it. Let me just stay. What are the dangers? What are some of the dangers that we can foresee? And what are some of the signs, perhaps, that we can identify in advance that may lead up to this, just so we help the women or the men who are listening on the other side to be able to identify these things before they actually find themselves in that sort of situation. Simona?
So what I will say is the dangers of what leads to those things is drug and alcohol abuse. Because your husband is beating you at home, you are not available mother anymore. You can't love your kids because you are hurting. I mean, who wants to look at a child while you are also paining, while you are hurting, while you have broken bones, while you are bleeding? So I think like most of our women, they tend to go to a bar, to a shipping, where they just want to forget about all of those things. And then what happens when a mother is not at home? The kids rebel. The kids feel like they are not being loved. That's why we have a high number of street kids. And these are all of those things are led by this GBV, these abusive things that those women have to endure. So that's just what I feel like. It's painful, man, guys. Even if you have to just go in the townships, listen to these women's stories. They don't even want to love their kids, because what's the use? They trying to love their kids. For instance, like with the boy child. The father is abusive. Now the woman wants to be softer with this boy. And then just because she's loving this child, this boy child, being soft with him, the father comes back home and then he beats her and the boy. And then this kid is going to rebel. So as a mother, she's like, okay, fine, let me rather go to the streets. Let me become a prostitute, whatever, just so that I can forget about this household.
So many. So many. I would say, okay, let me start with, we usually speak about green flags and red flags. We don't look at the orange flags, okay? So I usually tell people, as much as you do your green check, your green flags, okay, he's taking my green flags. Before you get to the red flags, there are orange flags. Those are things that are showing that these possibilities, because the orange flags eventually lead up to the red flags. So, and you have to look at people's behaviors and observe it more. Like when I react a certain way, how is the next person reacting? Because when you get into a relationship, or any relationship that you're forming, whether it's with your peers or romantic, you yourself as a person, you have your own toxicity that you're carrying, your own triggers. How are you responding to those triggers and those toxicities, and how is the next person responding? So when you're in this romantic relationship, what is triggering the next person? You have to pick that up. Because if you're going to claim that, no, I love this person, you have to say, okay, what are the triggers? Are you going to talk about those triggers? Okay, why do you act or behave a certain way? What makes you violent? Talk about those things. And most times why these things progress to that level is because when we are in relationships, we want the whole honeymoon phase. We want the roses. We don't want to talk about the dark stuff. That what triggers me, what makes me toxic, what makes me really angry, what ticks me off that I can become violent. Okay, when you play, what are those little things where you can see, okay, this person might be very violent in this way or controlling in this way? People don't talk about that in relationships. And most times that when we overlook that, it leads us to being violent in any kind of relationship, or where you feel like, okay, I should be able to control Elizabeth. So the moment Elizabeth says, no, you cannot control me, or I will not allow to be controlled, I want to assert that control. And that's where the power comes in, where I now feel, okay, psychologically or emotionally or even physically, I'm going to make you submit.
Sort of
into
break
that.
down the
Yes.
other person.
So you try to break down. So I know you previously mentioned that it's also about self-esteem. Yes, it can be self-esteem, but sometimes when people are in these situations, why they become complacent is, okay, I've tried this, I didn't get help. I spoke to my mom's or my sisters or whoever society says I should enjoy it. So it's fine. It makes me woman or it makes me man. Let me just accept this as the reality. I seeked out, so now there's the stigma that, oh, she's being abused, but they're not helping me. So people kind of settle into that and become complacent that, okay, I have to put up with this because it's normalized, it's glorified, and it makes me the villain. And also when you look at cases, most times the victim is questioned more on what is it that you did as the victim. Why did you allow it? They are not trying to understand the root cause. They are questioning you on why you allowed it or what happened or what did you do to trigger it. So there's a lot of factors that actually contributes to that and why people settle into this kind of lifestyle, and it becomes dangerous because, like I previously said, now you have kids and you think it's the best you can do for your children to stay in this relationship, to make your children happy. But no, it doesn't. It actually makes it worse off. It makes you worse off because now you become a bad mother or bad father because of what's happening in the relationship, and you take that out on the children, and it causes a ripple effect.
And
So
also, I
yes.
want to add something. I have an aunt, due to the abusive relationship that she was in, she gave birth to a disabled baby. And until today, that man is still the same. He has not changed. Now the boy, he's growing, like I think he's 18 or 19 years old, and he's still disabled. He has all of those questions. But then no one wants to stand up and say that, no, it's because of this and this that you came to this point. Like 2 weeks, no, immediately when he was born, the doctors picked it up. And then they were like, okay, fine, we have to do an operation on this child. But then the father was like, no, nothing is going to happen. So there are different, like she said, different factors to abuse, and then it leads to a disadvantage again. Now this poor child that was not supposed to be disabled is disabled because of the abusive relationship that the parents had.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm glad you guys brought up the dynamics, especially as it relates to children, because yes, one would, and especially mothers, I think, are the ones who reason this way, as to say that, okay, I'm just gonna hang in there, and especially if he doesn't harm the kids, maybe he just harms, in the case now where the husband is the abuser, or the boyfriend. Maybe like, yeah, as long as he doesn't harm the kids and he only harms me, I'll just stay strong for my kids. And sometimes you'd understand, because as you have said, ladies, at the beginning, that sometimes for the financial gain, and not necessarily for herself, she's thinking maybe about her kids, because in the case sometimes where this person abused the other, it's to an extent where you're not even allowed to work, because they know they are setting you up to be fully dependent on them. And now I don't have any source of income. I have these kids that are even going to school. I want an education for my kids. Perhaps I didn't receive one, or maybe I did, but I didn't finish my schooling, and I want my kids to have better, I want my kids to be able to go to bed with having had food in their tummies and all of these things. And now one has to think, now in certain situations, would it do more harm to, I mean, psychologically, yes, I believe, I understand, and I see how it would harm the child to remain in such a toxic environment. But then again, it's hard to now want to when you think about what it would do to the child, if maybe they move away from this situation, because there might not be now any financial support as well. And this is how children also end up on the streets somehow. That support, even though it's coming from someone who's behaving like a terrorist, it existed, and Black communities, honestly, if we are being honest, it's not, the support isn't as wide as it is in other communities, to be honest. It's people would, within your family, would even shun you, that, yeah, she was married, almost like an envy type of thing. Yeah, they were married, they wanted to be married, or yeah, what they felt, they'll judge you, they'll shame you, but seldom would they offer help. They can see you are struggling even to find a place to stay, but they're like, no, it's not my problem. That sort of thing. And
I would agree to disagree. When black people stand together, we are very powerful.
but how often do they?
We are very
How
powerful.
often do they?
But then it comes again to a thing of we have a lot of pride as black people. I don't want you to know what I'm going through. Even if I'm hurting, you understand? Like, I wouldn't want to share it with you. And then also the next person is so prideful again, and the envy spirit that, and they will be like, it's fine, let them go through. I already warned her about it. She doesn't want to listen, but it's fine. I don't want to get involved. And most people don't want to get involved in the black society because there are a lot of repercussions. There are a lot of repercussions to it. Now you were getting involved. This guy is abusive. This people is abusive, whatsoever. And then now I'm also endangering myself. And as black people, we don't want to go through that because we are going through a lot of it. So I just want to agree to disagree that black people are very powerful when they stand together, and we can really overcome things when we are standing together. But then we are very proudful.
I think that also, and in black families, it's very common to feel that, the moment I help you and it's advancing your kids and whatnot, it's a downfall for me.
Yeah.
If I'm helping your kids, it's a downfall for my kids. I don't know where that came from. It's as if though there's a brainwashing that there isn't enough for
like
all
that
of
only
us.
came
Like
in-
pull her down
I feel
syndrome,
like that
pull him
came
down syndrome.
after independence.
I feel we are made to believe, as much as we are independent, we're not really independent because financially, economically, socially, we're not truly independent because we're made to believe that opportunities are more just available for certain people, certain groups, and not so much for everyone else. And that has caused now that animosity, I believe, in families. And this is why help, you're right, once they are able to, families who are able to come together, beautiful things happen, but it's rare.
Yeah.
It's even rare to just sadly, to find a black family gathered together and there isn't a fight. These things
But
we
then
even see
this
on
reminds
WhatsApp.
me,
and
this
stuff.
reminds me of, I don't know, there's this stereotype again where people joke around it in the streets. They're like, yeah, but the number damaras who come play 11, 12, 13 kutter in die huisen. Should I translate?
Yes, please, for our listeners who do not understand
Okay,
Afrikaans.
there's a stereotype where people were like, as Nama Tamara people, the whole family stays in a tiny house. And then for us, that's unity. But then for the next person, that's like, what's going on? Everyone should just go stay on their own. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and victim blaming, you're also right. It's a real thing. And it's sometimes bad to the extent that if this person is going through an abuse, then they would even end up blaming the kids for it. They'll feel, if it wasn't for your existence, I wouldn't be going through this. And this whole discussion reminds me of a story that I recently read in the Namibian newspaper about a young lady who, I believe she's around about 21 or so years old now. She's a university student now, studying something to do with, I think, something in the law field. And this young lady, she was sort of adopted by her aunt and uncle, I believe her mom's older sister and her partner. I'm not sure if the couple was married. I believe it's the article said that they were. And so she was raised by these two people. She grew up looking at them as my mom and my dad. She referred to them as such as well. And she speaks of a memory she had where she witnessed her father kill her mom. And in her presence, she was woken up from her sleep. She thought she was going to die too because I believe there was a time where he aimed the weapon at her. And at the end of the day, he ended up committing suicide as well. And one of the things that she said that stood out, and it's really true, was that even when the woman, because people were aware that this lady would be abused. The abuse went on for years. She would be beaten. And the only concern was that they would ask, like, is it that bad? Is it bad? Were you badly hurt? When she says no, then it's fine. It's okay. People move on. But the fact is, it shouldn't be happening to begin with. And I read also that this lady would, apparently the man would reason that she goes to bars too much, she drinks too much, and this is why he did this to her. And you don't know what she did to me. I don't know if I recall correctly if there were cheating allegations or not, but I mean, it's just these cycles really. And black people also have, our families are, African families, our Namibian families have this thing, it's not your family issues, don't get involved. Yeah. Or a husband will tell the wife that it's none of you, that's a woman with her husband, don't go in between, other married couple stories, just this sort of thing. It's, yeah.
And And the thing is, perpetrators will find any reason to cover up their action.
Yeah,
They will
that is
find
true.
a reason to say, I did this because of this, even if it does not equate towards what they're saying. They'll find a reason to make up for why they enforce the abuse. So
That is true. Okay, so I think just to sort of, as we're coming towards the end of our discussion, where can women and girls who struggle with this type of issue go for help? I think this is leaning towards your area of specialty more, Liana.
Yes. I would, okay, so before I answer that is,
And not just women and girls, really.
yeah, but
anyone
everyone
who is in that type of
suffers
situation.
abuse,
Yeah.
yes. I'm trying to be as inclusive because everyone goes through it.
Through it, yeah.
So compared to the previous ages, right now we have so much resources available, more information. Information is more accessible. We're also having people really speaking out about it, advocating against it and stuff. So the eras of our mothers and grandmothers and grandma, they didn't have the amount of support or access to information or help that we have right now. And yes, a lot of people still don't take the help, or there's still a lot of stigma around it, and there's still a lot of victim blaming and everyone having to be knowledgeable around abuse to say that, okay, if the victim comes in, do not blame the victim. Rather, first listen. And I think as people, we don't listen enough. The moment someone starts talking, you're already trying to make up your answers or trying to find a way to respond, whereby you have to listen. And most times when victims are going through this, I don't want to say victims, survivors, when people are going through this, as a friend, as a sister, as a mother, first listen before you say, okay, you made that pot for yourself. Oh, but you were looking for it. Oh, but what did you do? First listen. And listen from an objective ear. So where people can go is there are social workers, there are institutes and organizations that are actually actively working with it. Police are also now being more educated around abuse and stuff. So you can call the helplines. There are so many GBV helplines. I can give you the 106 GBV helpline, that's for Lifeline. They also have the 116 line. The Office of the First Lady also has a toll-free line for GBV survivors. You can go to the social workers at Katutura Hospital. Before you get to the hospital, there's the officers are there that you can first go to. If it's bad, they'll be able to attend to you and help you to the doctors.
Is this the woman and child,
the
the
child,
GBV unit?
yes.
Yeah.
So it's now not just woman and child, it is inclusive because the woman and child made men feel left out and men and boys are going through it. So you can go to the GBV unit at Katutura Hospital. It's the first office before you even get to the main hospital near the maternity. You can go there. They will assist you. There's the after school center in Grace Block, which is mostly for kids. But as a person, you can go there. They'll be able to refer you. Go to the police stations. At the police stations, the police are now also being trained and equipped to be able to help you. And if you feel like, let me say, if I'm going through it and I don't want to talk about it or I'm afraid, talk to a close friend or person you feel you can trust or will be objective. And ask that person to go with you if you don't want to go alone. Look for information on the internet. If you don't have access to the internet, just go to the nearest library. Or just try and find information because we're trying to make it more accessible. We are also trying to educate the community leaders. Go to your community leader or your church leader. If you feel that they are not assisting you or giving you the help that you want the way you want it, there are other measures you can take. Rather than staying and then you end up dying or worse can happen, rather seek the help first.
Thank you so much, Liana. And perhaps are you at liberty to share your line, your personal or professional line, or basically a line where people can reach you as well, perhaps if they would require your services? Seeing as that you also work in the profession, if you're not open to that, then that's fine, of course.
I can give my business number, but usually with such cases, I refer them to Lifeline, Childline, or to the social workers, because I do have contacts of people I can always refer them to. So yes, I could give my business number. It's 085 7500 894.
Right.
So yes.
All right, and thank you for bringing up the issue of access to information as well in your roundup. Access to information is on the rise, yes, but I feel more can be done in that area regarding especially the marginalized communities. I believe that women themselves are a marginalized community still, and it's even worse when you find these marginalized women living in actual marginalized communities. So it's bad, there's communities where they aren't, where there isn't any availability of technology, there aren't any resource centers whatsoever. Hospitals are a mile away, or not even a mile, like kilometers away. Places of help, police stations are kilometers away, etc., etc. So sometimes information is really hard to reach these people, or just the sense of help, and so you end up hearing in worst case scenarios that people have lost their lives because of this, which is sad. And I feel those who are in a better position to make this change could perhaps consider this. And also, you'd find women would go to the police station. Back then, especially, it was common where they would open up a case, but then later on go withdraw it. I don't think they're allowed to withdraw cases anymore, though, which I feel is a good development in that area. And also I'd just like to encourage people who not to waste resources, because you find some people who go through all of this extent and go to places of help where help can be found, only to find out that they're not even telling a real story, only to find out sometimes that they're the perpetrators and they're just reaching there first so that they look good, or that nothing even really happened in that regard. Maybe this person was just drunk. I mean, these are cases that happen, so yes. And it perhaps maybe demotivates those who are in a better position to help from taking actual serious cases as serious as they should later on. So we have come to the end of our session, ladies. I'd like to express so much gratitude. You have both expressed such relevant information, such relevant topics. And I'm sure that all of our listeners will be able to have a great takeaway of which they can not only use to empower themselves, but also members of their communities. So I'm really grateful for your contributions. Of course, and we hope to have you on the show in the future once again. We have come to the end of yet another informative episode. Be a part of the conversation and share your thoughts in the comment sections. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, as well as by following us on Instagram. Make sure to turn on your notifications and be up to date with all of our content. For expressions of interest or simply just to interact, reach us on our WhatsApp and email lines. This episode will be coming to you soon on your local community radio station. See bios for listings, links, and more information. This episode has been produced with the support of the Namibia Media Trust in collaboration with the Deutsche Welle Academy under the NXT Journalism Training Hub.